Hey everyone, thanks for joining me today for episode 697 of People Behind the Science. I'm your host, Dr. Marie McNeely, and I'm excited to introduce you to today's guest, Gregory Krug. Listener support for this episode was provided by Lampire Biological Laboratories. And if you've been enjoying our podcast, it would be fantastic if you could share our show with a friend or subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast platform. And today, Greg has some outstanding stories of his own to share with all of us. So I hope you're ready to meet another one of our outstanding people behind the science.
Every day, discoveries are made that will change our understanding of the world around us. Dr. Marie McNeely is here to bring you the brilliant minds who are making these discoveries so they can share their incredible stories and take you on an amazing journey. Welcome to People Behind the Science.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to People Behind the Science. Today, I am excited to be speaking with our guest scientist, Gregory Krug. So, Greg, welcome to the show today. How are you?
Doing very well, Dr. Neely. Thank you.
Well, we're so excited to have you with us, and I'm looking forward to learning more about you and your career. So let me first start by giving our listeners a little bit of background about your current position and how you got there. So listeners, Greg is founder, president, and CEO of Lampire Biological Laboratories, a biotech life science company that produces biological reagents used in the diagnostic and pharmaceutical industries. He received his bachelor's degree in animal science and animal husbandry from Delaware Valley University, and Lampire Enterprises was founded shortly afterwards as a result of work that he started doing as an undergraduate student. Greg then incorporated the company as Lampire Biological Laboratories and acquired full ownership several years later. And he's received a lot of recognition for the work he's done with Lampire, including being named a trustee of Delaware Valley University. And he was also selected as one of Pennsylvania Business Central's top 100 people among numerous honors. And today, Greg, we want to get to know you both as a scientist, of course, and as a person. So can you start by telling us what you like to do when you're not doing science?
Oh, thank you. I enjoy spending time with my wife, Diane, my 5 boys, and my sister. I'm very passionate about sports, particularly football and lacrosse. So I was able to share with my boys that passion, and they grew up in the sports fields, playing those sports and others. And I had the opportunity to coach them, and we all really enjoyed together. And we continue to carry that on and put a lot of passion into that. The family and I also enjoy polo. I've traveled around the country, meeting different people involved in polo at different levels. I took lessons in my youth to how to play and got hooked on watching it ever since. I've been a sponsor for many, many different teams and tournaments over at least a 25, 30-year period. Been able to take honors in working with certain clubs and grow. And it's just a great sport, and it's a great family thing that we do as well.
Oh, very cool. I've never tried polo myself, but it is amazing to watch.
Yeah, it's an exciting sport. It's fast-paced. The love of animals plays a big role in your passion of the sport as well. If you love horses, it's a great sport to watch because the horse plays a major role in the sport itself.
Oh, absolutely. So we've talked about some of your passions, your hobbies outside of science. I'd love to talk about what you do scientifically as well. You hinted at your love of animals. So Greg, can you tell us a little bit more about your scientific side?
Well, the scientific side is the opportunities that are just out there are phenomenal. As the business has grown over the years, we've been exposed to a lot of new technologies. We're working with some top scientists around the world. So the passion just grows because you never know the work that you're doing and what you're working on, where that might end up. But more importantly, when it ends up touching friends and families' lives and you see the impact that it had and you can go back to where it started, there's nothing better. It just keeps fueling the fire. So you keep looking for those new opportunities.
Absolutely. And for people who might not be very familiar with the science of what you do at Lampire, how do you describe what the company does?
To a lay person, I would say, maybe not to this audience, we are like what the coal mine is to the steel industry. We are to the life science industry. We supply the raw materials for the biotechnology, pharmaceutical, and diagnostic industry. We supply biological reagents and raw materials that are shipped worldwide and then used in a lot of different applications. These applications, in other words, help both animal and mankind alike.
Well, I think that really brings it home and talks about some of the relevance of the work that you're doing. And I think the broad reach that your work can have, because you're impacting a variety of different fields and supplying these resources that are used both in clinical research and also some of the more bench science research as well.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And I know as a scientist, there are challenges, there are tough times, and having motivation can help. And I love inspiring our listeners on our program by sharing motivational quotes and sayings and things that could help them stay motivated in their own lives. So Greg, do you have a favorite quote or a saying or maybe a mantra that really keeps you going when the times get tough?
I think the one that really hits home for our industry and what we do, if you combine passion and adversity, it equals success. And that is very important when you're working in the sciences and understand it. But when I work with the youth, and especially my own family, there was a poem by Rudyard Kipling, and it's called If. And it has a real importance that, in other words, it can mean to people, giving them a way to look at life and to attract life and find that success in a different way. And I've used this with the youth that we have working with us at times, but I've also used it with other scientists that I referred it to them because of the mentorship that they were showing or doing. And I said, this poem really speaks to you.
Absolutely. And I think this mentorship is a key aspect of life and careers in science, because having these mentors at these critical points in your life can have a tremendous impact. So, Greg, for you, do you have particular mentors or role models or just people that you looked up to who you think had a big impact on you in your career?
I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for the great mentors that I had in my life. Starting out, when I first started, my partner, Craig Tarler, who I originally was working with, taught me so many things, whether it was about life or business and in different regards. But then I had great people like Alan Stewart, who was with a company called Roche Diagnostics and was a great mentor from not just the scientific side, but in other words, from issues from personnel to handling construction to doing the overall growing of a business and being very proactive in thinking. And then there were people like Dr. James Diamond, who again, very early on had the faith in us to work with us to develop the products we were working on. And then going out there and mentoring not just me, but our staff and people that he would come in contact about our business. He was always very, very proactive. And then there was others like Dr. Jack Emerson, a veterinarian who I actually worked for while I was in college. And then he came and interacted as we tried to start the business and has stayed with us. He just celebrated his 94th birthday. And to this day, he's still a great mentor and a good sounding board. And there's been many others. There's been people in industry that have been great scientists that have taken the time to explain and work, not just with me, but with our staff so that we could all grow and we could all be successful.
Absolutely. And I think there's a lot of interest now in early career scientists in industry positions in joining some of these startup companies or maybe starting their own company. So it's great to hear that you had these mentorships for all of these different aspects of it, because it's not just the work in the lab, the research, the development. It's all of these other things that you mentioned, like hiring and construction and just these logistics that I think people don't necessarily think about when they're considering these kinds of careers.
I agree.
Well, it's wonderful to hear you had these role models, and you have a particularly interesting story, I think, for how you got to this position today, Greg. And I'd love to share that with our listeners. So can you maybe take it back to the beginning and tell us what first sparked your interest in maybe animals or science? And what are some of these key moments that really took you to where you are today?
Sometimes watch what you ask for, but I was looking for direction when I was in my sophomore year of college. I wanted to do more, not just in working, but to give back and to help and support people in that. And I was applying for a job. It was supposed to be on a cattle farm, but instead of making a left, I made a right. I made a wrong turn, and I showed up at this horse farm. So I still went in and I talked and I said, I thought I was supposed to be here for an interview. And they said, well, we're not hiring right now, but if you want, leave your name and number. I'll give it to my dad and let you know. And so I tried to figure out, okay, I know I had an interview. So I found out the right place, went there, got the job there. But then I heard from Craig Tarler. He had called me back from the horse farm and says, I hear you looking for a job. Come talk to me. And we came and talked and we got together, and he hired me, and he had this very elaborate horse facility that he had built. And his background was nothing about animals, nothing about the sciences. His background was in the area of public relations for very, very high-end manufacturing. Like when we were in the Cold War, Cuban Missile Crisis, he had done a project for the pilots union representing them and worked with Congress, took Congress on a flight and basically showed them what a hijacking looked like without them knowing and this type of stuff. So he was very creative and outgoing gentleman. And he was missing his children growing up. So he wanted to cash out and retire, but do something. So he built this very elaborate horse facility, huge indoor arena, 50 box stalls for horses where you could drive the equipment around the inside the barn to clean them. He had a complete veterinary clinic with 3 operating vets, padded recovery stall, surgical suites. He had a whirlpool bath inside that he could walk the horses through for treatments and day clinics and outside hunt courses. And he ran horse shows on the weekend. But all of this, he depended on others. And at the time, it did not go well for him. And the economy had changed. So he put the farm up for sale. And a company came and said, well, we don't want to buy it as a research farm, but we would want to buy it as a opportunity for you to sell us animal blood that we could use to make blood agar plates, which we use for bacterial culture testing. Now, this company was located in Whippany, New Jersey at the time, which was about an hour and a half from our Bucks County facility. But for a college student, it was great because I was able to use their lab facility from midnight till 6 o'clock in the morning. And then I had this ag program where I could grab students to go with me to help me at different farms all the way from Lancaster County to parts of New Jersey. We would travel and pay the farmers to allow us to come there. We would collect small amounts of blood from the animals. In between, I would go to class. Then I would go to the lab, work with the blood. And I actually had some creative jobs I did on campus. While all this was going on, they got a kick out of it that I would sell hoagies out of my dorm room at night and things like that. So it was a lot of creativity and things going on at the time. And as we grew the business and things came together, we were in a field one morning and the fog was coming off, the dew was coming off the fields, and we had some backlit lighting and we're trying to collect small amounts of blood from the sheep, and then we return them to the pasture. And the Amish farmer comes in and he's looking at what we're doing. He says, you guys aren't vampires, you're lampires. And with Craig's background in public relations, he thought that would be a great way for people to remember what we did. So Lampire Enterprises was born. And in the years to come, when I took the business over, I was meeting with one of our clients and he was asking about the name of the company. And he said, you need to let people know more about what you do. And he helped me develop the name of Lampire Biological Laboratories, Inc. And from there, we just never looked back. The fortunate part of the growth of it is the ability to have the people I've had to work with me, not just my mentors, but our employees. Our employees are our biggest asset. And after being in business for over 45 years, when you see employees who have been with you for 30 years or more, 20 years or more, 25 years or more, some of these employees have retired from Lampire and have really given their lives to it. And I've watched their families grow within Lampire, and it's been part of Lampire. There are many employees that we have who not only did they work for Lampire, but they've had siblings that have worked for Lampire, or people who met at Lampire and got married and continued to work there. Our employees are our number one asset, but so are our animals. They get top care and they produce products that are helping human lives around the world. That's the real success of Lampire and its growth.
That is wonderful. And I love that this story started with taking a wrong turn and ending up at the wrong place for a job interview.
Yes.
And I think this is a wonderful example of just going with the flow and taking advantage of opportunities as they arise, because I think so many students out there feel like they need to have a big plan, everything sort of figured out in advance. And I think there are so many success stories where this was not the case, where you just kind of went with the flow and things turned out great.
It doesn't feel like 45 plus years. It feels more like we're just getting going. Every day is exciting and brings on new challenges and opportunities.
Absolutely. So I know there's a lot of things going on at Lampire at the moment, but do you have a particular thing that you're working on there, Greg, that you were just the most excited about that you'd like to share with us?
Ever since Lampire's inception, 1977, I've been involved in special projects. We've had the luck to come in on new technologies coming in, whether it was in the era of PCR coming on board or monoclonal antibodies. We worked with the first monoclonal antibody that was being developed. We had the opportunity to meet the gentleman who developed monoclonal antibodies, who worked for another company, but one of the first commercialized diagnostic monoclonals for the detection of prostate cancer in men. We were right there. And going forward, it just increased, whether it's PCR or gene therapy, the COVID issue, and having to help in these areas. Because of Lampire's background of being able to supply custom polyclonal monoclonal antibodies, and we do a lot of work with secondary antibodies, IgGs, BSA. We work with animal blood products and tissues and such, as well as human blood products. We developed a cell culture bag that is really unique, that you can grow your cells in the bag without having to gas it. You can just put it into a CO2 incubator. You can centrifuge in it. You can cryofreeze in it. It's just that type of development and projects we're working on. We're expanding it is exciting because, again, a lot of it is all internal and internal capabilities. We continue to do consulting work with clients on design of their peptides, and we supply their purification needs and assay development needs. We are a partner with them. We work with them on these abilities to grow. Lately, I would say we're really excited. We just went through our recertification for ALAC, our recertification for ISO 1345 2016. We're proud of our OLAs and other areas that we're working on, in that this all is constantly going on at Lampire and growing and expanding. Our facilities are expanding. The ability to take projects that we started working with a client at a certain level, now they're doing more outsourcing and we're supplying them more of those products. We've been involved with products going up into space recently. We've been involved in the past of that happened. We've been involved in Desert Storm. We've been involved in projects that have an impact on COVID and other parts of the world and domestically during this crisis. We were called on and were able to go to the call. But we're that company that's working on all these special projects. We're doing cloning of certain animals right now to help a company develop their animals in this country. And the opportunity arises, we get our people together. So it's not one special project. Is what I'm trying to explain to you, is that there are so many things that Lampire keeps getting involved in on the early stages as what keeps us growing and excited as a company.
Absolutely. And in this case, you're what we would call a technical founder, where you have the scientific expertise. What has it been like maybe seeing your own responsibility shift from, I imagine, doing a lot of the work yourself in the very beginning to now having this amazing team of people that you can guide through the process?
As I stated, any company's biggest assets are its people and their willingness to work with you and make those things happen. And there are challenges. And running a business, there's the business aspects, the marketing, sales aspects of it. There's a lot of different hats for different people to wear. And you find yourself, you're not going to be a master of one, but you need to have the knowledge in many and support many. So if you can't work well with others or depend on others and trust in them to make those decisions to help guide the company and do things, it can be very, very challenging. So people think that it's always fun to be at the top. It's challenges, the opportunities to talk to people, but not lose that common touch where I can talk to the individuals at any level of the organization and hope that they'll give me their true feelings and understanding of what's happening, what's going on from their perspectives, from what they're seeing in the company, all the way back to our clients.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought up challenges, because I think this is something that is not talked about enough in science. There are technical struggles, logistical challenges, and a wide variety of problems that you encounter on a daily basis. So, Greg, do you have a story of a time that you really struggled with something, or maybe had a major failure that you could tell us about and kind of walk us through how you worked through that tough time?
I think, again, it gets back to your staff. There are times when elements, conditions are out of our control, and they impact the research and the timelines that you're working with. And when this happens, communication's key, but also working both with your internal and external resources is very, very important. We have a group that is resilient at Lampire, but we've gone through some tough challenges and times, and we learn from them. One was a very devastating situation that we would hope nobody would ever go through, where we had a very old barn dating back to the late 1700s that had been expanded over the years. It belonged to the original farmer of one of the sites where we were, and we had a tragic fire.
Oh, no.
And you learn the people who are there for you and support you very, very quickly. And when you take your work as seriously as my staff does, and it was important to us to make sure that we could still get product out, take care of things, but also take care of our people who are very, very attached to the work. You can never lose the sensitivity that people are people, they are human, and they have feelings, and to work with them.
Absolutely. So how do you recover after something like this happens? One of these tragic fires, there's nothing really you can do about it, but try to sort of pick up the pieces afterwards. What really kept you going or helped you, Greg, get through this position?
It was just a real team event, obviously starting with the staff and the community and then the clients. They were invested in us. They counted on us. We worked together, strategized, having multiple facilities. Lampire now has over 6 facilities throughout the state of Pennsylvania. We just recently are opening a new facility in the Lancaster area. We're collaborating with Millersville University. And it's a situation of having multiple facilities that a tragic situation like this could have shut the company down. But because of the resources that we had, both internal and external, being able to regroup and still deliver products and get them out due to redundancies and having things in place, which again was something that was taught to us by some of our early mentors.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing one of these very difficult times in your own experiences. And I think these are important to talk about so other people see that these don't have to be career-ending moments. You were able to kind of dust yourself off, rally the team again, and get things going. And you've had quite a bit of success over the years, Greg. I'd love to share some of the success stories. So do you have a favorite success story, whether it was a big win or even just a small but particularly meaningful victory that you'd like to share?
There's so many. Looking at some of the anniversary dates of the company as we've grown and as we, just as a company, have developed in our abilities and some of our technologies has been overwhelming. But when you're there and you're working really hard sometimes, you have your head down and you're trying to get these products out that sometimes can be very highly regulated, and you're with someone, whether it's a patient who's getting treated for cancer or maybe another disease, and all of a sudden you see that product that you worked on, that you helped develop, is now on the counter in front of you, say calibrating a piece of equipment, or is going to be used in a treatment. It doesn't get any better because this is a family member maybe that you're sitting with, or maybe it's somebody else's family member or friend that you're with, and you're seeing the product, the hard work that you went in to do that, the importance of that product and how it's helping human life. There's nothing better. I tell my employees, in other words, we do a town hall meeting every Friday, and I know they might get tired of hearing it from over and over again, but it's important for them to know that every day that they come to work, that they're helping human lives around the world. And we all believe that very deeply. We've known it because we can see it. We can see it in the products that we make and where they go and what they're used for. And we get to see that sometimes in reality. Even if it's something as simple as a pregnancy test kit that somebody used at home, to know that reagents that we made are in that kit to help either create the fertility on a fertility kit or diagnose the pregnancy. And it goes a lot more complicated from there.
Absolutely. And I think it is really inspiring because it's easy to get your mind stuck in the details about these mundane tasks that you're doing every day and kind of struggling through that can feel like a slog sometimes, but they really are making important contributions to that bigger picture, which I think is a phenomenal way to think about it. And Greg, we talked about some of your passions outside of science as well. You mentioned sports, spending time with your family, animals, of course. And I love to encourage our listeners to explore their other interests, to read broadly. So we love getting book recommendations from everybody who joins us on the show. So do you have a favorite book that you'd like to recommend, whether it's related to science or not?
There's so many great books out there, different things to enjoy and learn from. Some become more passions to actually get away, but creates activities. But I think if you were to ask me about a book that had a big impact on my life very early on, there was a book called All Creatures, Great and Small. It was by James Harriet. And he had a series of books. He was a veterinarian. This took place of a veterinarian in a small town in England. And he had then a series after that of books that he wrote. If only they could talk. It shouldn't happen to a vet. Let sleeping vets lie. And in my early love of animals and working with them, it helped me to try to find my career path. And when this opportunity with Lampire came up and I first started it, it really showed me how I could achieve a lot of the satisfaction, the hunger that I had for knowledge in this arena, much more than I think I could have gotten if I had just become a veterinarian.
Absolutely. Well, I have read All Creatures, Great and Small, and absolutely loved it myself. So we'll definitely add that and some of the other books you mentioned to our website for our listeners to find there. So we appreciate those recommendations. And one of the other aspects of careers in science that many people may not realize is part of the job is travel. And I imagine, Greg, you've traveled a bit for science to go to conferences, to meet with these other companies or people that you work with. So do you have a favorite place that your science has taken you?
My favorite place probably would be Southern California, San Diego area. La Jolla is one of my favorite towns of all. So if we're doing a show in California and we can get down to San Diego and to La Jolla, I would say that's probably my most favorite. But I've also been to Europe. Thank you to the encouragement and support of my staff again, making it a very special trip. And going through different parts of Europe, especially Germany, was very, very special. And it'll be one of those life memories that you carry with you when you explore going out of your comfort zone of this country and exploring other countries can be really eye-opening and just makes you appreciate so much more.
Wonderful. So what was the occasion for going to Europe?
We go to a trade show in Europe called Medica, plus at least 35-40% of our business is overseas. So part of that being Europe and other Asian countries we travel to, it was an important part to have those meetings that you're talking about.
Absolutely. And if you had to recommend maybe one thing that you saw or did when you were in Europe, maybe Germany specifically, what's something that really sticks out in your memory as a really wonderful experience or maybe thing that you saw?
I love the people. I love the interaction, but the castles are amazing. And I would suggest don't try to see a lot. It's not quantity, it's quality. Choose them, really try to learn them and the history of them and the stories that go with them. You feel like it's a fairy tale at times, but there's a lot of history there. And there's a lot of history throughout Europe, whether you're traveling to France or wherever. Get to know the people, the culture, but get to know the history. It's amazing.
Well, I think that's great advice for travelers. I know I'm guilty of packing my itinerary absolutely full, but the idea of quality, not quantity, so you're not exhausted by the end of it and you can really enjoy those experiences, I think is fantastic. And I know as a scientist, there are a lot of stereotypes that we battle, Greg, whether it's portrayals in the media that aren't exactly true to life and just the thought that scientists are very serious, very critical, when I know most of the scientists that I know are some of the most funny, creative, amazing people that I've ever met. So it's great to share some stories and experiences that go against these stereotypes that others may have. So do you have an example of a story or maybe a quirky tradition that you have at Lampire that you've experienced elsewhere that maybe goes against this view that people have of scientists?
Well, we as a company, we have those quirks that we do different things together. We're very passionate about fundraising, and Team Lampire has a lot of different events that it goes to. But one of our quirky ones might be the bed race at the town of Everett, where they have these competitive bed races. It's a great activity. But we've done things like the Battle of the Businesses through the YMCA to doing special walks and talks where we're interacting and raising money for a great cause. But a lot of times it's for people also that we know and they're participating. And it's more of a social, happy, cheerful event. It could be something as simple as showing up at a Pennsylvania Life Science event, a social event, and we bring Larry the llama. And Larry the llama's there, and the next thing you know, there's Larry throwing an axe, cheering people along in other competitions, whether it's cornhole or whatever else. But Larry just makes a great presence wherever he goes.
I love it. And I love to hear that you and the team at Lampire are engaged in the community. And this is, I think, one of the other interesting and maybe unique aspects of the work that you do, Greg. You are really dedicated to education and economic and career development opportunities. So can you talk a little bit about this side of the work that you do?
Yeah, this is something that I'm very, very passionate about. I love working with the youth, with my boys, and being involved in sports and seeing different opportunities for kids coming together and working together and growing the youth. I've coached with some of my coworkers, and we talk about the toughest challenges sometimes are the parents, and trying to convince the parents to let you coach the kid and let them just enjoy watching their kids grow. And when you work with youth and you put it into that arena, and we are working in the animal field, we are subject to criticism sometimes by people who don't understand. So I've always taken a very proactive, starting with preschool. We've brought the kids to come and tour our animals and see them. It's a great petting zoo because we have over 20 different species, over 10,000 animals at these facilities. And you bring them in when you bring the preschoolers in, you're bringing in the parents and the teachers, and you're exposing them to a world that they're not familiar with or they might have heard negative things about. We work with the youth groups through 4-H, FFA, but more into the classroom, telling them about the opportunities there are in the life science industry, because kids start to pick their direction of where they want to go at a very young age. And a lot of times they're dependent on parents to do that directions. And if they don't know that these opportunities in the sciences exist, and there's so many opportunities in the life sciences, so we started to get more and more involved in going out and doing things with schools early and then growing it to the high school, to the university stages. Yes, we do a tremendous amount of internships, but we also do shadowing. We do opportunities where we bring groups of classrooms in. We work with programs called What's So Cool About Manufacturing, where the students are video photographing what you do and competing with other schools around the state to give awareness to manufacturing. We work with schools where we've got a tech program, a $10 million grant from the USDA to expand their school, to put an addition on the school, to bring in an ag biotech curriculum to help develop that workforce that we need for our facilities. We've worked with school programs through STEM, Women in STEM, programs that are enlightening people to not just the student, but to the family of these opportunities and the many, many different fields that there are in the life science industry. And it's only come back to help us. We're involved with schools in the cities, in the worst parts of the cities, like in Philadelphia and Kensington and such, developing programs because there are teachers there with visions, or principals that have visions that want to bring new opportunities to students. And as the Philadelphia area is blooming in life sciences and new incubators and companies are coming and growing, there are multiple programs that are now going on to give these students. The one program that was started in Kensington called Kensington Health Science Academy went from a program where they had less than 30% of the kids graduating from the high school to when a life science programs were brought in, which included dental, nursing, pharmacy. The principal had this vision of what he wants for his students, and he brought in outside resources and people. And they now have a graduation rate that is almost at 90%, with a very high percentage of those students now going to the universities or secondary education to further their career in those life sciences. That type of impact, if that doesn't invigorate you as an individual when you're involved with something and you see how you're changing lives, then something's wrong. But it's very inspirational.
Absolutely. And I really love this idea that, one, you're reaching a lot of these underserved communities and getting people interested while they're young, helping spark that interest in life sciences, but also helping them kind of see, appreciate, and get connected with different job opportunities. I think if a young child shows interest in science, people say like, oh, you should be a doctor, or they might be familiar with sort of the traditional academic pathway. But I think all of these other kinds of positions are sort of off people's radar. So I think it is so important to show people the wide variety of things that you can do with these kinds of interests in this kind of education.
I agree. It's fun.
Absolutely. Well, you're doing wonderful work there in the community. And I know both in the laboratory and out in the world, there are often limitations, unfortunately, Greg, to what you can do, whether this is funding, staff, technology, feasibility, or even just time. So if we took away all of the barriers that normally hold you back, is there one particular research question or maybe one particular problem that you would want to tackle first?
In my life, I have many loved ones that have been close, family members or friends that have lost to the battle of cancer. Yet I've seen us make so many headways. Cancer is such a huge word. And when you break it down and you see the successes that we've had and taking the challenge on and different approaches and starting with early diagnostics and using those programs to really give people a better fighting chance. And people were diagnosed at stage 4, and then you hear that they came through it and were able to beat that. That's where I would ask to find the cure for disease like this. And we really put it out there, not just as me as an individual, but again, whether it's the educational processes or any of this that we're doing, it's the staff. Let them be part of that and have that ability to keep those cures and diagnosis coming.
Absolutely. Well, I think this is definitely a worthy way to spend all of those unlimited resources. As you mentioned, it is a huge and very complicated problem. And I know you're making important advances to solving it. We appreciate you sharing your insights with us today, but I'd love to end with some advice, Greg. Can you share with our listeners maybe a piece of advice that you received at some point in your life that really helped you that you can pay forward to our listeners?
One of the things that you have to remember is that you have to face adversity, work through it with communication, a loving and passionate heart. And this has been expressed to me that people have come up to me at times and say, I don't know how you do it or how you can go through this or that and take on the challenges. So there's a lot to being involved in situations and having that stamina, having that passion that drives you forward. You just have to understand what it is that you're trying to achieve and the importance that's going to have, not just on yourself, but others. That's one of the biggest examples in watching how others have lived their life that I've mentored toward.
Absolutely. I think that resilience is key, sort of continuing to get back up every time you get knocked down. And I think that's something that you've definitely described in our conversation today with some of these challenges that you've faced with Lampire and over the course of your career. So we appreciate you sharing your insights. Is there any other last piece of advice, Greg, or a last piece of inspiration that you would like to leave our listeners with today at the end of our conversation?
Well, it's a beautiful day somewhere, right? The weather's out there and it could be cold. It could be snowing where you are. It might be warm, or it might be you're fortunate to be on the beaches. But when we're sometimes traveling or when we're at work or even at home, we never know what the person next to us is thinking or going through. And I think it's important today that there's a lot of mental stress issues that are out there and that people aren't aware of. So we get busy in our work and our research and what we're doing, when sometimes a simple hello or a compassionate, how you doing today? Or how are things looking? And lending that ear and time to the person next to you can have a very large impact in this world. And I think the work that we do in the life sciences speaks volumes of that. But sometimes we all get caught up in our work and we need the compassion more and not get too busy to not know what's going on around us.
Absolutely. I think that is such an important message that kind of even going slightly out of your way to be kind to somebody can have such a major impact. And I think that's a wonderful note for us to end our conversation on. Greg, if our listeners want to learn more about you and more about Lampire, what's the best way for them to do so?
We're very active on the major social media platforms such as LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, but they can visit our website. It's very simple, www.lampire.com, to learn more about what we do and who we are. They can reach out directly to me at gkrug@lampire.com or call our main office is 215-795-2838 to talk to us or talk to some of our staff. They're more than willing to help if we can help people in any way.
Fantastic, Greg. I appreciate you sharing those resources. Listeners, definitely get connected with Greg, get connected with Lampire, check out their website. And Greg, it's been such a pleasure to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for your time.
No, thank you. It's an honor to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity greatly. I wish you a wonderful day and everybody else. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been wonderful to get to know you, Greg, and listeners, great to have you here with us as well. We appreciate you joining us, and we hope to see you again on our next episode of People Behind the Science.